Fanboy. Humble Bob.
Hello, everyone. This is Fanboy here in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and I'm joined by Humble Bob somewhere in Northern California. Today, we've been taking our little trip down the James Bond Road
Bob.
over the last couple videos. I think I've only posted one or two so far, maybe just one on Connery. Then I have one coming up for Roger Moore videos that we talked about. But today we're gonna skip ahead to Timothy Dalton and his only two movies he ever made, Living Daylights and License to Kill. We're gonna start with License to Kill. We'll go back and look at Living Daylights later. But License to Kill, but what did you think? I mean, I saw it years ago, of course, back in the 80s, late 80s. Uh,
That's the
I
one with Dirty Sanchez.
That is correct. With yeah, it deals a lot with the drug dealers. I think they're influenced heavily by Miami Vice, Scarface, all those '80s type movies were was an influence on License to Kill. You know, James Bond is kind of like reflects. They're like the Beatles were. The Beatles just kind of reflected back what was happening in the culture at the time through their music, and James Bond kind of does the same thing. He reflects
I
back what's
liked I liked Sanchez too, except that he's like with his girlfriend.
uh, yeah, interesting movie, right? Go ahead and tell me what you thought, just in general, and then I'll comment on it.
Um, I liked it a lot.
Give me three reasons why you liked it.
This they had the cocaine submarines, um, the shark deaths, shark attacks. They got they came out with a couple cool gadgets in there, like the camera gun,
Mm,
and they had the cigarette toothpaste C4,
mm. Yeah, you caught up on all that, huh?
and then
Yeah, they had a bit of gadgetry. You know, they kind of toned down the gadgetry in the Timothy Dalton ones, but it was much more violent of all the Bonds. I mean, it was I think even more violent than Living Daylights, right? They got with the shark.
he knew that. I don't get it. He knew that he was a MI6 or whatever, or retired, or not retired, but he knew that he used to be MI6 or work
Yeah,
for
well,
the
he
British
said
government. He said,
the plot was, a lot of this movie's been mined. I noticed by Tom Cruise for his Mission Impossible movies. He's taken a lot of ideas out of this movie. The one with the rogue agent, James Bond going rogue, which happens to Tom Cruise a lot in those movies. He's always going rogue.
right.
The scene where they rescue Sanchez off the
Yeah, but
bridge.
he goes rogue. Dude. That's another reason why it's cool because he goes rogue. Um, when he
Yeah,
throws him off the bridge. Oh,
you know
that's right. The
when they rescue him out of the
when he escapes this thing.
right, out of the armored car. Yeah, it goes off the bridge, and then the scuba divers come and take Sanchez out. Remember
Yeah,
that
yeah,
part?
yeah.
Yeah,
The escape part. Yeah, that's
yeah,
what I
yeah.
said.
So Tom Cruise had used that again later on, and one of the Mission Possibles. I couldn't tell you the name because it's too damn many of them. Right, you get them all mixed up in my
Really?
head. Yeah, I probably one, two, or three. Maybe it was three. I don't know. Maybe the one where he goes rogue. I don't know. The Rogue Nation or whatever. But yeah, we're not talking about Mission Impossible. We're talking about Timothy Dalton's James Bond. What did you think about Timothy Dalton?
Oh, I see. Oh, we're just expanding. Okay. Wait. So, what did I think about him?
Yeah, I mean, some
Um,
people
he
have
looks
mixed.
very similar to Lazenby.
Lazenby, really? I don't
He
know if
looks
he.
similar.
Well, the Lazenby was not an actor. That was one of the issues they had. That's why he had so much trouble on the set. But we'll go back and talk about that
That's
movie
just
later.
on their.
Yeah, George Lazenby was an actor. Timothy Dalton is a film actor, is an actor, stage, TV, movies. was an actor from way back in the 60s. He was actually thought about, they actually auditioned him for Bond during the time of Roger Moore, before they even hired Roger Moore. And they said, well, and Timothy Dalton said the same thing. I was too young. He was just a little kid, right? So they basically passed on him because of his age. And so later on, when it came time again, they auditioned him again and they brought him in. But they only did 2 movies because they became, there was some copyright issues after this movie was made, License to Kill. And so Cubby Broccoli, who was the producer of all the movies, was getting sick, and his daughter was starting to take over Barbara Broccoli. And so by the time they got around to starting to make James Bond movies again in the 90s, with Pierce Brosnan, Timothy Dalton had basically dropped out. And he said, I'm not really interested anymore. Got other things to do, right? So it didn't work out, but everybody loved him.
Yeah.
Cubby Broccoli loved Timothy Dalton. He said, he really wanted to do a 3rd movie, but it never happened. But originally, this movie was called License Revoked, not License to Kill.
Oh, really?
And they decided to change it because audiences, especially American audiences, would think it's about their driver's license, license revoked. So they said that Americans are more brutal anyway, so let's just call it License to Kill, right? And that's how they got the title. But probably one of the most violent Bonds of all the Bond movies, I think, with the poor guys in the shark tanks, the heads exploding, right? There were a lot of violent scenes.
Oh yeah, that was great. That was great.
Yeah, a lot of violent scenes in this movie. And John Glenn was the director. John Glenn was the stuntman for most of the James Bond movies going back into the 60s. And then he got a chance to direct and ended up directing five of the James Bond movies. John Glenn came out of the stunt team. He was basically in charge of stunts going back into the 60s with the James Bond movies. And then he got a chance to direct, starting with For Your Eyes Only. And he directed all the way up. This was, I think, his last movie to direct. He directed 5 of them. This was the last one he did. I could be wrong about that, but I think this was it. I don't think he did the GoldenEye. I don't think he was director on that one. But other than that, okay, so you like Timothy Dalton, you like the violence. Yeah, it was, the one that got me, I was listening to the iPod of this movie, and it goes on for 2 hours. They do a deep dive on that podcast. And I'll, give it a shout out, James Bond A to Z. These 3 English guys talk about him. And the most interesting part was one of the most violent James Bond movies. Those guys on James Bond A to Z, they do a deep dive for 2 hours on it. It's amazing how much they can talk about it. But they cover everything. But that's what I was going to say. They cover everything. They cover every cast member, every director, every production designer, even the guy sweeping the floor at the in Mexico, because of tax problems, they had to move out of England. They didn't have enough money. This was a low budget movie for James Bond. It was a $30 million movie. Oh, anyway, they moved to Mexico and they shot it all in Mexico. And then they would basically find locations, outdoor locations, shoot the outdoor location. And then they would for the inside stuff, they would build sets to fit whatever was going on with the outdoor location. So they kind of ran around looking for things to shoot in Mexico. Even that last volcanic, that place where they go at the very end and blow it all up, that's a real place that was developed for the Native American Indians in Mexico. It was all made in Mexico. Because they couldn't afford to stay in England. So, and the whole story kind of wraps around Mexico anyway, right? With the drugs and all that stuff. So anyway, the really interesting story was that, remember the last scene with the what did you think of the last scene with the tankers?
With the tankers?
Yeah, the filled with drugs that they're taking off with.
Oh, that's right. Oh yeah, they do that in the movie Contraband. So that movie must have got the idea from there. They like they do it. They put it in the water, and then
I see.
and then you can filter it out of the water.
Filter it out,
or
yeah.
the gasoline. Yeah.
I'm not familiar with Contraband. When was that made?
That was a newer one, like probably like 2015 or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So it goes to show you that this movie is very influential on other filmmakers,
That was
right?
like 2009 probably.
Yeah, yeah. They've been stealing ideas from this movie for a long time. But the most interesting thing, it took them 3 weeks to shoot that. They said this took up most of the budget of the movie, was just this scene, blowing these things up and having this big fight. And then when they burnt the guy up, when they burnt Sanchez up, they said they had to edit it down because it was too violent. But the interesting part, it turns out, is that they had a lot of supernatural things happening when they were making that scene. Like one of the tankers blew up by itself. Nobody knows how it blew up. One of the missiles that they had real missiles out there. One of them went off and went for like a mile and then hit some telephone pole and hurt a telephone pole worker. And then during one of the explosions of the truck, if you freeze frame it during the scene when it blows up at the end, you can see a hand. Now this is all true, man, and this is well noted in some documentaries. You can see a fiery hand coming up out of the fire and pointing off the road. And what had happened there a few years before they shot this movie, this is near Mexicali. They shot it near Mexicali. There were 5 nuns in a bus, went off the road and died right at the spot where the hand is pointing. So maybe the nuns didn't like James Bond or something.
Fanboy. Humble Bob. Fanboy. Humble Bob.